Evening. My name is Laura Goldman. I am the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss. And for our weekly webinar series, we are covering the topic of dining out. I know I've brushed over the topic a few times here and there, and this is just strictly focusing on that. So hopefully I will be able to impart a few other pearls of wisdom or just reinforce some things that you already know. So let's get started. Our weekly mantra, as always, is to remember that it's the quality of your calories that matters. And hopefully through this, you'll be able to see some ways and techniques to emphasize the quality of your calories if you happen to be dining out. What we will cover is first and foremost, the challenges that come from dining out and why that might be a somewhat large hurdle to overcome. I will talk about various strategies, which somewhat layer on top of each other, but strategies for dining out with confidence. Then building a game plan, or more like a checklist that I've put together there to combine all of those strategies together. And then give you a few challenges for the next week up ahead to see how you can navigate dining out and if there's any way to do better or at least have more confidence with it. As always, I like to leave time for your questions at the end, so feel free to hit that question button at the bottom of your screen, and I'm happy to address any of those that come up about this topic or any other nutrition-related question you may have. So why this topic in general? What is the pull for specifically focusing on GLP-1s and dining out? And you may already be familiar with that because it does add this level of difficulty when you are taking a GLP-1. First and foremost, your appetite is not changing from being at home to going out. It's still most likely reduced. Your preferences may change as well. Some people find that foods that used to sound good or be appealing aren't quite as appealing anymore. So maybe your old standby of a menu item isn't quite going to work for you. And you have that slower gastric emptying. So that leads into the next point where since we tend to have larger portions at restaurants and since the social impact of being with others or maybe a bit of a more mindless approach or the need to feel like we have to clean our plates because this is a different environment, then you might eat more portions than you intended, and that can lead to feeling that you've overeaten and feeling ill from that. And as I mentioned, the social pressures that can come with this, someone might encourage you to eat an appetizer or drink a cocktail, as well as having an unfamiliar or at least less commonly used menu in front of you where you might make rush decisions, and the travel that may be associated with this. You are more likely to be dining out if you're traveling, since you're not going to be cooking in a home, and that can all add on to this complexity and perhaps even a bit of a fear of dining out. So the key to overcome all this is to prepare yourself as much as possible. And hopefully we have some strategies to help with that. Also, I think it's very important that we try to shift our mindset away from that restricted feeling. If you have been avoiding dining out or feeling as though it's impossible, you may feel like you're missing out on life. And I think we need to acknowledge that dining out is a part of life. It's a social aspect, and we can't really avoid that forever. And research does show that having a more flexible approach to eating and what we choose to eat versus having this very hard line, black and white approach where we can only eat at home or we can only do this and this, that's not as helpful. So having that flexibility and allowing yourself that flexibility can help with long-term maintenance of your successes so far. And so some of those mindset shifts, talk about a tongue twister there, go from I can't do this, or maybe internally feeling that you're being deprived of your social life and the dining you used to enjoy, or maybe saying out loud, I'm never going to be able to do this again. The exact phrases I can't turn them around to that other phrase very easily, but saying, no, I can do this. I'm going to make intentional choices though, not necessarily spur of the moment. Or if there is a special treat you were looking forward to, tell yourself you can have it, but just less. So the first strategy, and it may seem like a no-brainer, and maybe you've tried it already, try and preview that menu. Most restaurants have it published online, and so far, any place that I've called to request a menu, I've not been denied. So finding a way to see the menu in advance can help prevent those impulsive choices. You can look at this menu days, weeks, months in advance if you know you've got something scheduled that far out. And when you look at the menu, you can peruse it when you're not feeling overly hungry and not feeling pressed to make a decision because maybe the server is there taking other people's orders. So let yourself find those one or two meals that align with the GLP-1 goals. And I do touch on that more in more detail later. But try and find those one or two meals ahead of time. So that way you'll know where to go and what to pick. And among some of those goal aligned items, and again, I'll discuss a little more, but look for words like grilled or baked, not deep fried. Try and find sides that involve a lot of vegetables. And if you're getting a soup, make sure it's broth based if at all possible, or at least not cream or cheese based. And as we already mentioned, deciding in the moment is generally when we can have less desirable choices, whether it's simply because it's the first thing we see, or that's what everybody else is ordering, etc., etc. It's better to have that decision already made. The second strategy, again, protein, we can't escape it. We've got to focus on that because that still needs to be our priority. It is one area that you want to make sure is part of your meal. So even if you were going to order a salad, which I think a lot of people say that is what they're going to order when they dine out, if the salad doesn't come with protein, you haven't necessarily found the best possible option. And there are ways to add protein to salads, and that would be an angle I would encourage you to take. So find out what those options are. And if they can be grilled or baked, and if they come in the form of chicken, fish, or shrimp, lean beef, any legume, tofu, all of those are excellent options. And if they are prepared where there's not deep frying, even the stir frying option that I have in the image here is a very healthy method of preparation. And stir fry is generally, as long as we account for sodium and rice content, is one of the healthiest types of foods to order oftentimes. And if at all possible, try and eat the protein first on your plate before moving on to the sides, which may be a bit more filling. There are some exceptions to that, but in general, that's what you want to focus on. The third strategy is to be a portion pro. As we know, portion sizes at restaurants can be much, much larger than what portions we give ourselves at home, and the plates account for that as well. I'm sure you've noticed that some of the plates can be absolutely gigantic and can be shocking to see. And with some people who are growing up with the clean plate club, it can be very difficult to leave anything on the plate, and so overeating is very common. Try and be practical about this approach. Rather than waste food, if you are open to having leftovers, I'm a leftover lover, ask for a to-go box up front or ask them to box up half of your meal before even starting or before even seeing the meal in front of you. Or alternatively, you can share your entree with somebody who also enjoys the food. If an entree might be too large, combining an appetizer, maybe a high protein appetizer, with that salad that might not have protein in it, sometimes that's a smaller amount that you can get, and that is perfectly acceptable as well. Also, try and eat slowly because maybe you are perfectly comfortable having half of it, but you may find that you get tripped up because you eat very quickly as you're listening to people tell stories or what have you. So try and eat slowly, put down your fork and knife between bites, and then after 20 minutes, you can say, my time is up, and box up the rest. Now, to touch more detailed on the goal-oriented menu choices, I put this in sort of a stoplight categories here, where the ideal situation is to choose things that are in the green light category. As I mentioned, your proteins, if they're grilled, baked, broiled, steamed, and not covered in a sauce, that is what you want to look for. Also, salads, if they tend to be a bit heavy-handed on the dressing, you can ask for that to go on the side. In terms of side dishes, I really think it's important to look for vegetables and what those options are. And if at all possible, find steamed or roasted versions. I know that many times they can also be sauteed, and that's still better than, say, getting chips or fries or something like that. And again, aim for broth-based soups if you're ordering a soup, or at least, if it's hard to identify that, no cream-based. So no cream of chicken, cream of potato, soups like that, it's better to avoid. In terms of yellow light, and so again, when we're looking at our goals, we want to be cautious about these options. So sauces and dressings, those can be where quite a bit of calories can sit with not a lot of quality, depending. But I still think they're important to adding enjoyment to the meal and preventing things from tasting dry or less flavorful. So ask for them to be on the side if at all possible, or ask it to go light on those sauces. In terms of grains and starches, which tend to be added to many entrees, especially if it's rice or quinoa, even though quinoa does have protein in it, still important to ask people to go light on those. I think many times the inclination is for someone to fill up the plate with rice and quinoa just because it's a good space filler, and people generally don't complain about that, but try and ask for it to be light, if at all possible, just so you don't accidentally fill up on mostly carbiness, or even though quinoa does have protein, you still don't want to overfill yourself. And with alcohol, it is allowed, but be aware that you may be more sensitive to it. So one glass of wine might affect you a little more strongly than it used to. And try and stick to one drink, and try and avoid anything that's too sugary or has too many mixers. Or opt to just drink water. And then I recommend avoiding or limiting those in the red light category. Breaded and fried items are generally best avoided. It just tends to hold on to a lot of extra fat in there. Also, any bread or chip baskets, so those that free crunchy or starchy thing right before the meal, we can fill up very easily on those rolls or the tortilla chips. And if you can ask for it to either come with the food, or at least in the case of tortilla chips, aim to finish off that salsa with as few chips as possible. And that is a better way to navigate that. And also the high fat or the very sugary desserts, again, either avoid or limit. I don't want to say you can never have again. So if you are going somewhere where you know they have the best type of dessert, please allow yourself to enjoy some of that. I know that dining out is not 100% of your time. So if this is a, once in a while occasion, you can still enjoy it. It will be at the end of your meal, so you'll have gotten most of the food and the nutrition that you need. So if there's a little bit of room for a couple bites, that's okay, but just limit it. Touching on a few special scenarios where dining out may happen, or you are at least in more of an unfamiliar territory. With travel, it can also be important to pack up some snacks. If it's a road trip, it's much easier to have sort of those bigger snacks, so Greek yogurt. But if you are going on an airplane, you can bring some of the nuts and the jerkies with you, or once you are through the TSA line, usually they are also selling some Greek yogurts and some healthier snacks in some of those stores. And if you are going somewhere where you know to expect some good food, definitely research the restaurants nearby. Maybe you'll find a restaurant that you hadn't heard of before and that you'd like to try, and this is a chance to get excited about that trip. If you're doing social events, again, it can be that social pressure, and if you would like to have a small snack before arriving, that can be very helpful. And if there's a buffet or a kitchen, try and walk down the line and see what's available. So that way you can see, aha, here are some of the items that will be good for me. Here are some of the items that I think I can maybe not focus on quite as much, so that we don't fill up our plate with foods that maybe you didn't want in the beginning part of that line. And then finally, with alcohol, as I mentioned before, try and limit it to one drink if at all, and definitely avoid drinking on an empty stomach. Again, you may be more sensitive to it, and we want to proceed with caution, especially if you are out and about. We want to be safe as possible. So I did create a checklist that combines all of these strategies together essentially, and you can feel free to either put your own version of a checklist in your notes app perhaps, or create your own version of a checklist that works for you, or take a screenshot of this and ask yourself, did I get a chance to preview the menus? Did I eat the protein first when I was there? Did I box up half the meal? And this can sort of help you keep those items at the forefront of your mind. And also, I wanted to mention at the very bottom here to allow yourself some flexibility and without any guilt as well. So we're already here at the challenges of the week. And I did my best to avoid a protein challenge because I know we've had a few of those. So challenge number 1, preview that menu. If you know that you're going to be dining out soon or have wanted to, and now you have the chance and this is your time to shine, before you go there, take the time to find that menu, look it up and look it over. And that way you can have a chance to see how that works for you. You can choose the meal in advance, and then I challenge you to stick to it. By the way, if you have trouble accessing or finding a menu of a particular restaurant, please contact Premier Weight Loss staff and they can get you in touch with me, because I will be happy to make the call myself to access the menu. I'm sure that we can make that work. And then challenge number 2 is doing that portion practice. And part of the reason why I wanted to put this in here is, first, you can allow yourself to see how you feel with having that smaller portion in front of you if you have half of your meal boxed up ahead of time. But also, I know some people report a little bit of anxiety about making this request. And this is the challenge to overcome that anxiety, if at all possible, and see how you feel about making the ask, and then also about how that portion still looks to you after you've already had that boxed up. If that's a little difficult and you would rather just have things boxed up later, then just commit to eating only half or less of what's on your plate, and that's perfectly fine. After that, now you have leftovers for the next day. So to put that all together, I just wanted to remind you that GLP-1s and dining out can absolutely go together, but I do know it can be nerve-wracking or at least challenging at first. I had a friend who was going out to Las Vegas and she expressed to me how nervous she actually was before she left because of these particular challenges. But actually, I got text updates along the way, and eventually she wrote to me saying this was much easier than I expected. I was able to find the right items, and I was able to have a glass of wine, but just once, and I didn't feel like I was missing out. So I think that's great to see it in action and know from other people who've experienced it that this can work. And again, approach that with a game plan. If you're prepared ahead of time, that definitely leads to a lot more success later. And then I tried to use a little alliteration here with the protein, portions, and previews. Putting that together makes you prepared. And as always, allow yourself some flexibility. There are some restaurants or some fast food places where the perfect meal just doesn't exist. But if you can find the best possible or good enough, that is still fine, because just once in a while is not going to be derailing your entire progress that you've made so far. And with that, I will leave it open to questions if you have any about this topic or any other nutrition topic. Now's your chance to ask, or if you want to share about how you have navigated dining out, love to hear that too. So I will wait here for just a few minutes. Okay, well, with that, I hope that you found something helpful, maybe something new, or at least a good reminder of some options when you are out and dining. And I hope this gives you a little more nutrition freedom and allows you to enjoy your time out with friends and family. If any questions come up later, please reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff. They can get you in touch with me, or they also are a fountain of knowledge, and I'm sure they can help as well. Thank you again. I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.